It knows I'm recording, so it's going to be troublesome. Hey guys, been quite the week, and today's a fun episode because today we're on the Crown Chakra, and I want to jump right into the point of helping you understand what to do with the Crown Chakra in order to get that inception of energy. People talk about release, people talk about cosmic energy, and I personally, through my experience, have found that researching the crown chakra throughout my studies, I find I get a bit of a runaround after the first primary four and you get up to the throat. People tend to get a little wishy-washy, and I find that there isn't a lot of information that's practical or tangible. And what we want to do to use this information efficiently to get you to open your crown chakra is you want trust. This isn't just about releasing energy or, if you think of Japanese anime or some of the other characters throughout mythology where they can shoot lightning from their hands or energy balls from their body, that's a different type of release and not one that is very much for being scientifically proven. There are videos of pyrokinesis of people who can touch newspaper and straw and set it on fire with their chi, with their ki, their aura, their electromagnetic field. That's a different type of release, as I was saying. What we want for our crown chakra is trust. Thing with the crown chakra that plays into the historical figures throughout history, people tend to relate it to religion, is when you look at the old stained glass windows in churches and whatnot, and the old depictions of Jesus and saints, they always have that halo. That's the depiction of showing their crown chakra, that aura, that energy that's been opened and free. The other religious element that comes into play with the crown chakra is around that trust. It's that you are trusting that the universe is doing what's best. It's working in your favor. People who are more on the religious side, call it God's plan. You have trust that things are God's doing. Whichever way you want to view the universe, there's a certain element that you need to trust that things, and if you think of your bridge of incidents that I've mentioned in previous segments, the path of situations and scenarios that you embark upon when you decide that you've set yourself out to accomplish a goal. And then there's all these other extra tasks and jobs and just a whole rabbit hole to go through. And not all of it is pleasant. And the release of the energy through the crown chakra comes into trusting that these events are there for a reason. It's trusting that even if you are stuck, even if things are going bad, and even if you've had to release things that are not easy to release, and sometimes, not just sometimes, quite often, to be frank, these are people. It's one of the hardest elements of being human is that separation. And immediately when people talk about release, I find it's an automatic thought that it goes into releasing people from your life and experiencing that separation. Sometimes this is a good thing when we release things that don't serve us. We quit a job that we absolutely hate and make us miserable, or And vice versa, if there's a coworker at your job that things aren't quite working out for you and they get released, that pressure, that release of it, it feels good. Something great just happened. And I remember there's been a common occurrence within my life that when I go through trials, tribulations, or stages in my life that are quite dark, there's a common theme that I will see a dove and it will be outside my window. And every time I see it, not every time I see a dove in general, but there's always this one moment where I'll need clarification that things just turned out for the best. As bad as things were for days, weeks, months, you hit that threshold where you're going to get confirmation it's over. And for me, I always end up seeing a dove. And it's always a really beautiful reminder to know that I made it. And the thing is, as much as sometimes we feel that we have failed, we feel that we didn't accomplish our goal, we're still here. And we're all in the place that we are because we worked hard to get here. We have all succeeded to get to the point that we're at. The flow of energy of being able to have trust, being able to have that release, determines if we stay stuck. There's a few different elements to if we stay stuck in a situation. One is around learning the lessons. One is around making the same mistakes or repeating the same mistakes. And sometimes it's just having that trust that you can let go. Sometimes walking away, sometimes changing your path. That is the release that you need. Determination and perseverance take trust, though. Often, when it's time to release something negative, it's much easier to do than to release something that we have perceived as positive. There is a really well put together, about 7 minute segment from the anime The Last Airbender. And it's all around chakras, and it's a really great resource that explains how each chakra works and how it ties into your body, emotions, and how to essentially open on a beginner level each chakra. And what ends up happening is at the end, when the character has to release his crown chakra, he has to release his feelings for the person that he loves. And in the movie or in the show, he's just like, nope, not doing it. Because what happens is because all the chakras are intertwined with each other, and some are more connected and interchangeable with others. The crown chakra and the root chakra are very heavily connected, even though they're polar opposites. Because when we have to release, we then have to release all the other chakras going through. So we have to release fear. And so when we think of a situation where we have to release a person, then we're releasing the grief, the guilt, the shame. If it's somebody we love, all those energies and all those chakras are being felt at the same time. Because we have a fear of loss in our heart chakra. We have a fear of guilt and shame if we've made the wrong decision. We have a fear of change in general. What is my life going to look like without this one person? What if it's a child and you're going through something and you have to release that energy? kind of giggling a little bit because sometimes the situation isn't always as detrimental as we fear it to be. That's the thing with our fears. When those energies take over and it hits our third eye and we start imagining all the really negative, nasty, random sequences of events that will happen. One thing that I think always made the movie so popular, that Final Destination series, is that we go through that. Maybe not all of us, but I know I certainly look at a situation and we can see the domino effect of how if something gets knocked over and pushed, that eventually a whole string of events will happen and this dramatic outcome of somebody being hurt will take place. And the truth is, it's just our imagination. Sometimes it is based off logic and past events that we've heard of. For example, bookshelves and cabinets. If you have a newborn child or a toddler running around, these large objects do need to be fastened down or to the wall because people have had experiences with them tipping over and, crushing the child, unfortunately. And then we hear these stories and we get all these ants, and then the fear kicks in, and the reality that our legal system is so poorly done that if a parent does lose a child, the parent is then criminally charged and put in jail when they're already suffering enough. And you can see how just explaining a little bit of these things in life that have happened and do exist, it makes that release so much harder. It makes that trust so much harder. I was giggling thinking about the parents who let their kids go to school or walk to school, and they start thinking about all these horrible, terrible things going on. And I've even heard stories where the parents will follow the kids and, like, ninja stealth sneak and hide behind trees and peek out and watch the kids and follow them all the way to school, um, and stealth mode, making sure that the kids get there because they just have this paranoia that something bad's going to happen. And as I was saying with, I believe it was the third eye, the paranoia can be good. It's healthy to have a certain amount of fear. It keeps us alive. It lets us know what's safe, what isn't. And then the other aspect to when it comes to dealing with fear, if we're talking about that surface level tension of injury, there's fears of being hurt, there's fears of having pain, there's fears of maybe a combination where you get hurt and then you're locked into this lifelong injury where the pain never goes away. Then there's the fear of death. There's also fears of separations, and I personally find a big fear that's around trying to find that trust is the fear of, as I was saying, somebody else, a child, a loved one, being hurt or being stuck in a situation where they're going to feel pain. That's something that I'm battling constantly with my daughter and her medical issue with having juvenile arthritis since the age of 4 and almost getting to the point where the doctors start talking about paralysis and if she's going to need a wheelchair for the rest of her life. And the trust has to come in to know that with the right information, the right knowledge, with the right people involved, with preemptively taking action to be on top of things, that we can live a better life than these fantasized fears that we come up with in our head. And there's a lot of trust because there's a lot of factors. And the thing is, the older we get, the more experienced we are, the more random crazy shit that we've seen go wrong in our life. And in many ways, the people, this is that saying, ignorance is bliss. The people who are really arrogant and ignorant really do think that will never happen to me. The thing is, they have that release of that energy. and they have that confidence, and they go about their day just completely fine, and they sleep well at night too, because they have that trust. Even if it is, that would be a negative affirmation. It can never happen to me. But that still gives you that vision of what your life is going to look like, and then our actions then step into a world where what we do doesn't affect us. And because of that, it does give us a loop back into the root chakra sense of safety and security. We're safe. It could never happen to us. So what's the worst that could happen? You know, Ashley's thing has always been what's the best that can happen, which I truly find that that's sometimes one of the harder things to visualize versus all the bad things that can happen. But that's the thing, and that's how the third eye can block the crown chakra, is because we can see it, we can visualize it, we hear stories, and we know people who have suffered losses. So, what else can we do with this trust? How else does it tie into the other chakras? We can trust that when we have fear in our root chakra, we can trust that we have our common sense, that we have our knowledge, that we have natural instincts that, in my personal experience, in really heavy situations, do take over. And to be honest, I'm actually much more composed in a really high stress tension situation than I am in a more regulated, peaceful situation. When things are normal and calm, I actually don't know what to do with myself sometimes. And we are reminded about our guides. We're reminded about our ancestors. We're reminded about spirit animals, totems, the angel numbers, the ear chakra that I was mentioning. There are elements that you will see as you go through life that will let you know that you are on the right path. And when you can see the synchronicities, you can feel the energy shift, and you can put it together that you are going in the right direction, and that you can't accomplish your goals without going through this one specific pathway, these bridge of incidents. The trust becomes easier. It's very hard when we're younger, especially to find that trust, because sometimes we just see a pattern, and often we're limited to what we're exposed to. And as much as the universe and the internet can give us for resources, we're still only exposed to a very small percentage of it. And from there, and the way this was explained to me when I heard about it, it referred to a little bit of computer technology lingo, is that our bodies, our sensory perception is intaking around, say, 500 gigs of information at all times. We have a filter that only lets us see about 30% of what's there. And this is where we end up blocking things out. And this is also where that meditation piece comes in, where we can be consciously aware of what's been known as our reticular activating system, if I'm saying that correctly. I'll have to make sure I double check on what it's called and get back to you with that name. And essentially, the way it works is if I tell you, think of your right pinky toe and be aware of it. Feel it. Is it touching the floor? Is it touching your shoe? Is it warm? Is it cold? Your feet, that one area of your body, it's always inputting information into your nervous system, and you are always feeling it. You're only aware of it when you're paying attention to it. Because we have this 30% filter that just lets us know what's our body has decided is essential. When you're experiencing things like pain, you can use these methods and meditation techniques to be more aware of different areas of your body. Instead of always focused on something that feels painful, you can be focused on something that feels nice, or sensory awareness. And with kids who have um, sensory overload issues, things like kinetic sand, or often there's certain types of fabric that's used with women's clothing. It's just really soft and fuzzy. The other one that I heard was one guy had like a really fuzzy pillow, and when he gets really overstimulated, he finds himself subconsciously, he ends up hugging this pillow and stroking it like a pet. And it's because our nervous system is then paying attention to the good things, the positive things. And the thing is, there's always more positive out there. And we always have to have that trust that there is more positive, there is more good out there, there is more good to come. Sometimes we forget about it, sometimes we lose track of it, sometimes we're not aware. Sometimes we are raised to live rather sheltered lives, and there are just things and possibilities that are mind blowing to us because we've never experienced it before. And then we have to have that trust that when we want to experience it, it'll be a good experience. And then comes the question, what happens when we have a bad experience? I put it to, you have to look at the bridge of incidents and you have to see how those experiences play into your goals and where you're going, and that you, again, have that trust that you are going through the hell to get to the heaven. I'm going to take a small side road here and talk a little bit about our trip to Ottawa last weekend. What's happened in Ottawa the last few days is interesting, is the best I can say, because I don't really believe that there's a negative that's going on. Things are more so just interesting rather than positive or negative. And it was a really beautiful experience to be there, to be a part of it, to feel that trust that everybody who was there, even when things started to get a little heavy the last 48 hours, there was still that trust that this is a peaceful protest. There was that trust that you can bring your children, you can bring the elderly, and unfortunately, in some circumstances, that trust was broken. And people who have been through that are experiencing that very dark night of the soul right now. Many people around the world since COVID have been experiencing that dark night of the soul. And it begs the question, how is any of this serving us? How is any of this good for us? How can we trust that things are going to be okay? And with the question, you have then closed your crown chakra. You have then created that blockage. With that affirmation from your throat chakra, you have sealed your crown. Letting go is one of the hardest things to do, which is why it's the last chakra. It's what connects us to an external energy versus just the planet's energy or the energy that we would experience from somebody else in our life. I can speak from my own experiences where when you get that energy transfer from somebody else, it's very hard, especially if it's a really good energy transfer. It's very hard to imagine where or how you're going to get that feeling. Energies are feelings, there are emotions as well. There's sound frequencies that jiggle and vibrate our bodies, and it makes us feel a certain way, and then we visualize the actions that we're going to take to act out those emotions. Sometimes we visualize we're going to throw a coffee cup because we're really, really angry. Sometimes we visualize that we're going to give somebody a hug because we're sad or they are sad. When we're able to understand that there are different levels of energies that come through, that cosmic energy, that God source. A lot of people find comfort when they put their trust in a God, a Jesus, a religion, a prophet, because you're then not relying on anybody else around you to give you that good feeling. It's coming from an external source, that cosmic energy. When you genuinely surrender, and I'm really debating if I want to use the term give up, because in some ways it can be a positive experience to just say I'm done and whatever happens, happens. Once you find that trust and you're able to bit by bit let go, and what I was saying a while back about being the observer, and instead of caring very passionately about what outcomes you're looking for, having trust that you're just going to watch what happens. And if you think back to the Chinese farmer, where his horses run away, and the neighbors say, well, that's too bad. The farmer says, maybe. And then the horse returns with more horses, or depending on how the story is spoken, one of the horses is like a really expensive stud. It's worth a lot of money. And so the neighbors say, wow, what good fortune. How lucky are you? And the farmer says, maybe. To which, while trying to tame one of the horses, his son is thrown off and breaks his leg. And the neighbors all say, well, wow, poor him. What bad fortune. And the farmer says, maybe. About a week later, as the story goes, the military comes through for a draft looking for all young people to join the military, and they pass over the son because he's broke his leg. And all the farmers say, all the neighbors say, what good fortune. And the farmer says again, maybe. It's all just interesting, as how I like to see it. There is no good, there is no bad. When I was getting really heavy into spiritual sciences and I embarked into the realm of demonology and negative energies, negative entities, I found the most comfort and the most trust coming from just feeling that things are either neutral or just interesting. It's an interesting development that in Ottawa they have managed to clear out what was in front of Parliament. It is also an interesting development that Calgary has joined the protest as well as on the American side of the border. There are now hundreds of thousands of people swamping to the Niagara border to clog that route. And so as you begin to see the fractals of neutral. You begin to see the fractals that there is no such thing as things being destroyed or created. The energy is just moving from one location to the next. For me, this gives me comfort when it comes to that trust, when it comes to being able to release. One thing that Ashley and I have spoken about a fair bit is that sense of control. And she's very a big advocate for outwitting the devil, for being able to take control over yourself, control over your actions, responsibility. And these are all phenomenal tools when it comes to being able to get that sense of security in your root chakra back, that you feel safe, you feel secure, because you've given yourself that sense of control, because your actions are then giving you the outcomes and results of what's around us. And it also plays into that metaphysical law that everything that's going on in your life is only taking place because you have allowed it. And so this is where the release comes in. We have so much control, and when the energies are offset, when there's too much control, when we're too focused on we need to control every look at the politics of what's been going on in things lately. Everybody's trying to control everybody else. There's heavy repercussions and backlash to it. Nobody likes to be controlled. Nobody likes to be controlling. And then there's that trust, that release. What happens when we let go, when we stop controlling? The textbook answer is that the energies will stabilize themselves and everything will equally balance out and be okay. It's hard to imagine that. It's hard to imagine just letting go and allowing things to just happen. I remember back when I used to play video games, you'd go through some of these stories, and if it was a choice-based game, there got to a point in my spiritual development where I would play the story through and I would be curious, what happens if I don't do anything? What happens if I just become an observer and I literally just walk through the game and let all the other players do whatever they do? I don't try to save anybody. I don't try to be a hero. I don't try to do any damage. Just be. And as much as I am an advocate for quitting video games because of the negative impacts that they do have on your life, I did enjoy this one element of it because it got me in the right mindset in life to be able to just watch and become the observer. Sometimes bad things do happen. Sometimes things happen, and there is that separation, that grief, the heart chakra. And then it goes back down through all of them. Heart chakra is hard because it goes up and down. Then the negative affirmations start. Things are my fault that I didn't do more to stop the separation. Guilt, shame, fear, grief. You have to remember, what if there is only one sequence of events to get you what you truly want? It's a bit of a fixed mindset. But what if it's true? What if the only way to be successful is to let go? There's other things, aspects, and elements that people get really caught up on. And it's not just about releasing negative people. It's not just about trust. Those are large elements to it. There are names, there are titles, there are job descriptions, there is programming, that we have been given our whole life. There is identity. Ever give that a thought? Anybody? Happens if you release your identity? Who are you if you let go of everything? If you didn't have where you live right now? If you didn't have who's in your life right now? If you just took it all away, who are you? If you're no longer a son, a daughter, a mother, a father, if you're no longer your job title, if you're no longer your hobbies, if you're no longer the I am, what are you? You are you. And the best way to find comfort in being able to release some of these things is knowing that you are always still just you. Not just you are you. And it's something that can never be taken away from you. One person that I spoke to a while back, they had this really big blockage around titles and around medical diagnoses. Something along those lines. And I have also seen this with people who have a police history or criminal record. The fact is, it doesn't matter. If somebody else decided to put on a piece of paper a title or phrasing that they have chosen that in their definition describes or defines you, at the end of the day, it is still just paper. Yes, what we put on paper ritualistically and what we infuse with our feelings, a love letter, a hate letter, a fuck Trudeau Nazi flag, whatever, it does carry power. Ultimately, it's what we're feeling and what we're expressing outwardly that feeds that energy. Once that paper is gone, once those connections to people have been removed, once you have gone through your life and you have purged negative people who can't get themselves together, who can't stop complaining, who everything is always just drama. Once you get rid of negative foods and you decide you're only going to eat healthy and clean, once you get rid of negative habits, you give up masturbation, you give up video games, you give up alcohol, you give up things that you, even on a subconscious level, know are bad for you. You start to see that there are many different levels of release. Another thing that's spoken about religiously is that people, Mormons, nuns, or priests, will give up their worldly possessions. One of I would put this on about a medium scale. It's really beneficial to be able to let go of materialistic items. You don't need to go shopping. You don't need that new purse or that fancy car. And we get tricked with all these conditionings that these things will get us what we want. Some of them are a tool. Do we need clothing in the middle of a Canadian winter? Kind of, yeah. Do we need a king size mattress that's $5,000 and super made by NASA and really fancy super memory weird foam stuff that they used to advertise? Like, no, we don't need. We can sleep on the floor with nothing. It might hurt, but it's not going to kill you to not have these things. You don't need shoes. The biggest things that I've removed from my life that gave the biggest pushbacks from people when I talk about it is shoes and meat. And I still eat meat on occasion. Love fish. I like high frequency meat. I like high quality meat. I like, I believe it's grass fed over grain fed is the best kind of animals. Free ranged, happy animals. Not animals that are cuddled like people and grow up really manically fucking depressed and obese and then pumped full of hormones to be made fatter and mature quicker. And then they're put on a slaughter line and they watch everybody in front of them, all their friends and family, being killed and having their heads cut off. It sounds really grisly and gruesome, but I've known people who their job was to put the chickens on the hanging conveyor belt. And the thing is that people who are doing this feel it's wrong and they don't even like doing it, and sometimes they'll half-ass it and then the chicken doesn't even get killed, it just gets nicked by the buzzsaw. And these animals die with this immense amount of fear, cortisol, the other stress hormones that we experience when we're having a bad day, and it makes us feel really, really nasty inside. And we're consuming that. A little bit off topic. Fact is, sometimes releasing meat from your diet does have a lot of health benefits. There are health benefits to it. I've never not cut meat out of my diet and not lost like 20 pounds for doing it. People are conditioned to think that if you don't eat meat, you will die. People are conditioned that if you have feet, you need shoes, and you can't possibly use your feet without shoes, even though people have done it for 300,000 years. Well, I'm not entirely sure about the history of shoes or where moccasins started to be invented, but we've been barefoot in many climates, in many cultures, for many centuries. And going barefoot outside in the summer is not going to hurt you. Might be uncomfortable. You will not die. There is just this sense of trust. And the thing is, as human beings and as part of the political aspects of what's been going on in Canada, we want the frickin' choice. We want to have a choice if we're going to wear shoes outside. We want a choice if we're going to be able to eat meat, if we're going to be able to eat vegetarian. People want the choice if they're going to eat at McDonald's or if they're going to eat a salad. We like to decide. We like that danger. We like to release and have some trust that things are going to be okay. There's some health nuts out there that look at somebody drinking a Coke or a Pepsi. The thing is, the person drinking the Coke and the Pepsi has a lot of trust that I can drink this and I'm going to be okay because I've been doing it for years. There are side effects. They still have that release. There are people who release from pharmaceuticals. They decide, I don't want these chemicals in my body anymore. They trust that their body will go into a state of homeostasis and your chemicals will balance themselves. Especially if you're working with a nutritionist or somebody like Ashley, who is a nutritionist, and you will be naturally giving yourself the chemicals and the chemicals is not the right term, the vitamins, the stimulants and the nourishment and nutrition that will stimulate your body into making the healthy production of the natural chemicals we need to be stable. Things like oxytocin, things like dopamine. Bananas. I think that was a fun thing that I learned. That's a happy food. If you want to feel happy, go eat a banana. I mean, I'm giggling just thinking about it. I think probably because banana is just a ridiculous word and it's put into a bunch of kids' cartoons. with minions screaming about bananas. There's that trust that when we are given the choice, are we going to go and do something extreme? Are we going to go climb Everest? Are we going to go skydiving? Are we going to go bungee jumping? We're going to go drive our car to the supermarket. There are dangers to all these things. We trust that things are going to be okay. And the more that this is where that repetition comes in and mastering your schedule, the more that you're able to do something that you felt that you couldn't do, the more trust you're going to have that things are going to be okay and you're able to release that energy into the universe. I have about 15 minutes here, and I also want to get some Reiki in. I've had a few people going through some rough stuff. Especially, again, I'm going to mention the whole thing with the politics in Canada, so we're going to be sending out some Reiki to them as well. Before I get into that, the last thing that I'm going to give you guys that really helps for your crown chakra is, as I've stated for all the other chakras, affirmations. Powerful, powerful, powerful affirmation that helps with the crown chakra is I release myself. I release myself from negativity. I release myself from bullshit. I release myself from, and you can custom tailor it too, from this job that you don't like. You can release yourself from other people's emotions. You can release yourself from other people. You can release yourself from fear. I release myself. I used to use this one a lot when I first started seeing the major energy shifts and synchronicities. Meditation, visualization, being able to visualize a positive outcome will let you let those energies flow out through your crown. Another element to it is, sorry, I had it and then I forgot it. It released it before I was ready. Affirmations around trust. And again, when you go through the stages that I teach for chakra analysis and you walk yourself through each chakra and you focus on what makes you feel safe and secure for your root chakra. And then you get it, you write it down. It's something tangible that you can see and now hold. And then what gives you pleasure and joy? What gives you motivation? And usually by the time you have the first two, something that makes you feel really safe, really secure, and you have pleasure and joy thrown into it, you're going to be motivated to keep doing it, whatever it is that is. And now the fear comes in and it blocks the crown chakra from what happens if we have to release these things that make us feel safe, secure, these things that make us feel happy, these things that give us motivation. Ever released your motivation to do something? Had a lazy day? You know, you feel the energy shift and you feel just blah because you've cut that cosmic energy coming into you. A lot of it still comes down to visualization and your throat chakra, what the story is that you tell yourself. You really have to be in the habit of knowing with full faith that things are going to be okay, even if they are not okay now, very much not okay now. These emotions will pass within 90 seconds. Just sound waves going through you that's making you visualize an action that will let you release that emotion. Other beautiful methods of release: art, singing, music, dance. Those are all arts. Martial arts. Good release for anger. You know, you are expelling that energy physically. Sports is another good one. When you are physically exerting that transfer of movement, that transfer of heat and energy, exercise, weightlifting, picking up something really heavy, the energy is going somewhere, it's leaving your body, and you then need to replenish yourself. Some of the most times, some rephrase that in my head. Some of the best moments of peace that I've had are when I'm genuinely just too tired and too exhausted to give a shit. And it's at that point that you find peace. When you really exert all the energy out of you, all that negative energy that builds up inside and it clogs the chakras, when you're just done. And you're so exhausted that you don't care anymore. Doesn't always sound the healthiest. It has some really positive benefits. Let's see what else. And going back to what I was saying about if you have medical diagnosis, I've known people who have been submitted into Ontario Shores, the essentially a mental institution, and it goes on. It's kind of like think back to high school. It goes on your permanent. Everything's recorded and documented and monitored by a fucking computer somewhere, probably in Area 51. It really doesn't matter because it's not you. You are you, and only you can prevent forest fires. Only you can control how you feel. And when we go through the stages of self development, when we go through the integration stages, when we're incorporating in things like mushrooms or LSD, DMT, the various psychedelics that let us experience these emotions. And when we can visualize the actions that it takes to get the energy out, we find peace. You guys are not what's on your driver's license. You guys are not what's on your police records or your criminal records or your medical records. You guys are not what your fucking vaccine passport says. Citizenship is another one. What country do you belong to? Well, maybe you grew up with several countries and you are a genuine patriot to numerous countries, but your citizenship only says that you can live in one or the other unless you have dual citizenship. You know, think of it like a driver's license. You get your driver's license when you're whatever, 16, 18. You drive your car until you're 50. Say one day you just decide, I don't really want to drive anymore. I don't really want to do it. I want to pay the money. People go through this with firearms memberships as well and licensing. Just because your license has expired or you stop paying the $80 annual fee that says that you are licensed and authorized to do this one thing, it doesn't mean that you can no longer do it. You still know how to drive. You still know how to do this one skill, even if you haven't done it for a while. It is still a part of you. No piece of paper or plastic is going to take that away. And equally, a piece of paper or plastic that says you are no longer allowed to do this one thing, then you become what Ashley was saying earlier, the elephant that's staked into the ground when they're a little baby. And they know that they pull really hard on the stake, and as a baby, as an infant, they can't uproot it because they don't have the energy. And then they turn into this monstrosity of an elephant that I was going to say its tongue weighs more than a car. That's a whale. But you get my point. And it can pull this little tent stake out of the ground with ease. But it doesn't think of it. It doesn't occur to it. Because it doesn't see how it has changed. We are not what we are told to do. We are only what we tell ourselves that we are allowed to do or not allowed to do. It comes back to what I was saying there. Everything that goes on in our life, metaphysically, only exists because you allow it. Think about that. If you continue to have pain, I can't vouch for this on a large scale, except for outside myself. I suffered chronic migraines since I was a child. And when I worked with some mushrooms, and I worked with Ashley through her programs, and I made the commitment and the agreement that no way fucking hell am I ever going to have another migraine again. I've had two in the last year, and I used to get them every 3 days. And each time I was able to decide as a conscious decision, I'm not going to have this pain. I'm not going to allow it. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves that we're not going to allow negativity. Sometimes we're going to have to remind ourselves what these, it's mentioned in the Toltec Path to Freedom, these agreements that we make with ourselves are. These things that become a fixed mindset or an open mindset, a conditional belief or an unconditional belief. I feel like I'm very passionate right now. I can keep going. However, we are almost at time. So I'm going to go a little bit over for some Reiki. We have some members of our group who have been through the ringer, so to speak. Some physically, some mentally, some emotionally. Some have lost people and are going through that pain of separation. One in particular that I always carry in my heart, her daughter has a pain management issue. And I'm giving Reiki out to all of you. Respectfully, I'm going to keep it anonymous. If in the last week you have received a message from me saying that I am sending you Reiki, I was sending you Reiki at that moment, sending you Reiki later in that day, and I'm going to be sending you Reiki right now. And I want you to make the decision that you can be healed by this, that you are only going to allow healing. You're going to release whatever is causing you anguish. And right at my moment of quiet, I have people knocking at my door. What's up, guys? Kids just wondering if I'm done yet. that concludes my segment of the tour through the chakras. If you found what we spoke about here today helpful, by all means, please share it with your friends, share it with somebody who you know needs what it is that we do. Advertising and marketing has never really been our thing, whereas Instagram is very, very annoying with constantly taking down our content, with taking down our hashtags, with shadow banning and blocking us from being able to see the people who are messaging us and commenting on our stuff. And it hurts to say it out loud that they just don't want people getting the information that's going to make the biggest difference. They don't want you being healed. They don't profit when you're suffering and your trauma is cured. For everybody who needed some Reiki, if you need some more Reiki, by all means, please message me or Ashley. Uh, Ashley's email, ashley at elementalgrowth.org, myself, Tristan at elementalgrowth.org. Message me in the Signal group or just comment on this video. I will see you all next week.